October 17th, 1987. Fairbanks, Alaska. The temperature had already dropped to 25 degrees as experienced hunter James Whitaker, 42, prepared for what should have been a routine 3-day hunting expedition in the remote Yukon-Charlie Rivers National Preserve. A former park ranger with over 20 years of wilderness experience, Whitaker was known locally as someone who knew the Alaskan wilderness better than his own backyard. His wife Sarah recalled their final conversation that morning. He was so methodical about everything. Checked his supplies twice, made sure his emergency radio was working. Jim never took chances in the wilderness. Their 2 teenage children, Michael and Eliza, helped load his Ford Bronco with supplies as he promised to bring back the biggest moose they'd ever seen. By 3:30 p.m., Whitaker had reached the remote trailhead and radioed his position to the ranger station as planned. That was the last confirmed communication anyone would ever have with James Whitaker. What no one knew then was that multiple weather instruments at the Fairbanks weather station had recorded an unexplained electromagnetic anomaly in the region just hours after Whitaker's final radio check-in. The events that followed would baffle law enforcement, wilderness experts, and eventually scientists from 3 federal agencies. The official investigation concluded with a frustratingly vague, missing presumed deceased designation. But the truth, as you're about to discover, suggests something far more disturbing than a simple wilderness disappearance. When Whitaker failed to return on October 20th, Sarah waited exactly 6 hours, the buffer time they had always agreed upon for wilderness expeditions, before alerting authorities. Alaska state troopers immediately mobilized one of the largest search and rescue operations in the region's history, involving over 70 personnel, 6 aircraft, and specialized K-9 units trained for wilderness tracking. Search Coordinator Lieutenant Daniel Harmon documented the eerily perfect conditions. Visibility was excellent. Recent snowfall would have made any tracks obvious, and the weather had been stable, ideal conditions for finding someone. Yet despite these advantages, search teams found only Whitaker's campsite, seemingly abandoned in haste. His tent remained properly erected, sleeping bag unrolled. A half-prepared meal sat on his portable stove. His rifle leaned against a tree. The only items missing were the clothes he'd been wearing and his emergency pack. The team discovered Whitaker's tracks leading away from the camp in a straight line heading north, before they abruptly ended approximately 120 yards away. Not faded, not obscured, they simply stopped as if Whitaker had vanished mid-step. Search and rescue veteran Thomas McKinley's official statement reads, "In 30 years of SAR operations, I've never seen anything like it. It was as if he had been lifted straight up." Initial theories focused on practical explanations: animal attack, disorientation, or sudden medical emergency. However, evidence contradicted each scenario. No signs of struggle or blood were found. No additional human tracks indicated disorientation, and Whitaker's medical records showed him in excellent health with no history of cognitive issues. The search for James Whitaker continued for 17 grueling days before being downgraded to a recovery operation. By day 21, with weather conditions deteriorating rapidly, the formal search was suspended. Sarah Whitaker refused to accept this outcome, mortgaging their home to fund private search efforts that would continue sporadically for the next 3 years. "The authorities kept telling me people don't just vanish," Sarah told reporters in 1990. But that's exactly what happened. Someone or something took Jim. What Sarah wouldn't learn until years later was that the night of James's disappearance, 3 separate groups of observers had reported unusual aerial phenomena in the region. 2 hunters approximately 14 miles east of Whitaker's position described seeing a blue-white light hovering silently for approximately 12 minutes before it shot upward at impossible speed. A family of 4 driving on the remote Elliott Highway reported their vehicle experiencing complete electrical failure while observing a disc-shaped object with pulsating lights overhead. Perhaps most significantly, FAA radar operators at Fairbanks International Airport logged an unidentified radar return moving at over 1/200 mm before it disappeared from their screens. These reports were quietly collected by Air Force personnel from nearby Eielson Air Force Base, but never shared with the Whitaker family or local authorities. When pressed years later under a Freedom of Information Act request, the Air Force would claim these records were misplaced during routine file transfers. The disappearance gradually faded from public attention becoming just another tragic story of the unforgiving Alaskan wilderness claiming another life. But beneath the surface, questions persisted, with several witnesses reporting government personnel collecting soil and vegetation samples from around Whitaker's campsite weeks after the official search concluded. Before we reveal the shocking discovery made by a geological survey team 15 years after Whitaker's disappearance, if you're finding this investigation compelling, subscribe to the channel now. You won't want to miss our upcoming cases of unexplained disappearances that challenge everything we understand about our world. In October 2002, everything changed. Dr. Eleanor Reeves, leading a climate research expedition measuring glacial retreat patterns in the same region, made an accidental discovery that would reopen the Whitaker case. As her team drilled ice core samples approximately 7 miles from Whitaker's last known position, their equipment struck something solid approximately 40 feet below the surface. "We assumed it was just rock," Dr. Reeves stated in her subsequent report to the National Science Foundation. "But when we extracted the core sample, we found embedded metallic fragments of a composition that didn't match any known natural mineral formations in the region." The discovery might have been dismissed as unrelated debris had it not been for one critical detail. Fused into one of the larger metal fragments was a partial leather watch band that matched the exact design and manufacturer of the watch James Whitaker had been wearing when he disappeared, a distinctive Omega Speedmaster Professional, with a custom leather band his children had given him for his 40th birthday. Laboratory analysis of these fragments would yield results so anomalous that 3 separate facilities refused to publicly release their findings, citing inconclusive data. But an anonymous technician from Pacific Northwest National Laboratory would later leak that the metal contained isotopic ratios inconsistent with any known terrestrial alloy. The discovery prompted the FBI's Special Investigations Unit to reopen the Whitaker case in early 2003. Now classified as a potential homicide rather than a wilderness accident. Agent Kimberly Chen, the lead investigator, began by re-interviewing every surviving witness from the original search operation. What emerged was a pattern of inconsistencies in the official record. Several search team members recalled details that weren't in their original statements, Agent Chen noted in a partially redacted case file obtained through FOIA requests. Most significantly, 4 separate individuals mentioned unusual equipment malfunctions during the search, compasses spinning erratically, radio interference, and battery drainage, all within a specific 300-yard radius of where Whitaker's tracks ended. Meanwhile, metallurgists at MIT conducted non-destructive testing on the recovered fragments. Their preliminary findings, published in the Journal of Material Sciences, identified the metal as an aluminum-titanium alloy with unusual properties. Extreme heat resistance, unknown manufacturing techniques, and most puzzlingly, microscopic patterns on its surface that appeared to be precision engineered at a scale beyond contemporary industrial capabilities. Professor Robert Hansen, who led the MIT analysis, stated, "What makes these fragments truly extraordinary isn't just their composition, but their manufacturing precision. The microstructure shows evidence of manipulation at nearly atomic scales, something beyond current human technology." When investigators returned to the ice field in summer 2003 for a more thorough examination, they discovered something even more significant. The ice surrounding where the fragments had been found contained unusual radiation signatures and trace elements typically associated with extreme heat events. Whatever had created these metal fragments had generated temperatures high enough to instantly melt and then rapidly refreeze substantial volumes of glacial ice. As the technical analysis continued, investigators uncovered another crucial piece of evidence: satellite imagery from October 17, 1987, the night of Whitaker's disappearance. NASA archives contained thermal imaging data from an experimental Earth observation satellite that had passed over Alaska, approximately 45 minutes after the reported electromagnetic anomalies. The declassified images revealed a highly localized heat signature approximately 300 yards from Whitaker's last known position, a perfectly circular area approximately 80 feet in diameter, where the ground temperature had briefly spiked to over 300 degrees Fahrenheit before rapidly cooling. Surrounding this circle was a secondary ring of electromagnetic disturbance that precisely matched the area where search teams had experienced equipment malfunctions. Dr. Harold Mitchell, a geophysicist consulting for the investigation, noted, This pattern is consistent with what we might expect from an intense, focused energy field making contact with the ground. It's remarkably similar to patterns observed at purported landing sites in other well-documented cases, though at a significantly higher energy level. Further evidence emerged when investigators interviewed Matthew Collins, a former Air Force radar technician stationed at the Clear Air Force Station, a ballistic missile early warning system facility approximately 100 miles from Whitaker's disappearance site. Breaking decades of silence, Collins revealed that the facility had tracked an unidentified aerial phenomenon that night, moving at speeds exceeding Mach 3, before it hovered for approximately 9 minutes in the precise area where Whitaker was last known to be. "We were ordered to scrub the records and never discuss the incident," Collins stated in a sworn affidavit. When I asked my commanding officer about it later, he told me it was a classified aircraft test. But I'd seen every aircraft in our inventory on radar, and nothing in our arsenal could move like that, stopping instantaneously from supersonic speeds with no deceleration. The investigation took another unexpected turn when Sarah Whitaker provided investigators with a journal her husband had kept during the months before his final expedition. In it, James had documented 3 separate occasions where he believed he had observed unusual aerial phenomena while in remote wilderness areas, descriptions he had shared with no one, fearing professional ridicule. On August 3, 1987, just 2 months before his disappearance, Whitaker had written, "Observed same light configuration again tonight, approximately 30 miles northwest of Fairbanks. Hovered silently for 7+ minutes before ascending vertically. No known aircraft capable of this flight pattern. 3rd sighting this year. Considering reporting to authorities but concerned about credibility impacts." This journal entry aligned perfectly with a previously unexplained radar anomaly recorded by Fairbanks Air Traffic Control on the same date and approximate location. More significantly, when investigators analyzed James Whitaker's hunting patterns over the previous 5 years, they discovered a striking correlation. His chosen hunting locations had gradually shifted to areas where unusual aerial phenomena had been reported, suggesting he may have been deliberately seeking these encounters. FBI behavioral analyst proposed a new theory. What if Whitaker hadn't been randomly taken? What if he had been tracking these phenomena over time, and whatever he was observing had become aware of his interest? This theory gained credibility when investigators discovered that Whitaker had purchased specialized photographic equipment just weeks before his disappearance, equipment designed specifically for nighttime and low-light photography. This equipment was not found at his campsite, nor was it ever recovered. Among the most disturbing pieces of evidence was a partial voice recording discovered on Whitaker's emergency radio when its internal memory was examined using advanced forensic techniques. The recording, only 3 seconds in length, captured Whitaker mid-sentence, "coming down right above me, circular with," before being cut off by a burst of static followed by silence. In 2005, the investigation reached a critical breakthrough when additional fragments were discovered during a targeted excavation of the ice field. Among these was a partially melted camera component, later confirmed to match the serial number of equipment purchased by Whitaker before his final expedition. More significantly, embedded within the corroded remains of the camera's memory storage was a partially recoverable image. After months of painstaking digital reconstruction by FBI forensic experts, what emerged was extraordinary. A blurred but recognizable image of an airborne object approximately 120 feet in diameter with a distinctive metallic surface, reflecting light in an unusual spectral pattern. Below the object, barely visible at the bottom edge of the frame, was what appeared to be a narrow beam of light extending from the craft to the ground. Image analysis experts from 3 separate agencies confirmed the photo showed no signs of manipulation or fabrication. It had been taken moments before whatever happened to James Whitaker occurred. Dr. Elise Carpenter, a physicist specializing in propulsion systems at MIT, was among the scientists who analyzed the reconstructed image. Her assessment was both measured and profound. What we're seeing in this image doesn't conform to any known aircraft design or propulsion system. The energy signature visible in the light beam demonstrates properties consistent with a directed gravitational field, essentially technology that could manipulate the very fabric of space-time. If authentic, this represents technology far beyond current human capabilities. In December 2007, after years of investigation, the FBI formally concluded that James Whitaker had likely encountered an object of unknown origin that had somehow transported him from his location, resulting in the anomalous materials discovered years later. This conclusion was immediately classified at the highest levels, with only a heavily redacted summary provided to the Whitaker family stating that James had encountered circumstances beyond conventional explanation. The truth about what happened to James Whitaker might have remained buried in classified files had it not been for a whistleblower from within the Defense Intelligence Agency in 2010. Dr. Lawrence Peterson, a senior analyst specializing in advanced aerospace threats, risked his career by coming forward with information that had been withheld from the official investigation. According to Dr. Peterson, the metal fragments recovered from the ice weren't just unusual. They were identical in composition to materials recovered from other incidents involving unidentified aerial phenomena dating back to the 1940s. These materials had been stored at a specialized facility in Nevada, dedicated to analyzing objects of unknown origin, and had defied conventional scientific understanding for decades. What makes the Whitaker case unique? Dr. Peterson stated in a closed congressional briefing later leaked to journalists, is that it represents one of the few instances where we have comprehensive before and after documentation, radar data, physical evidence, witness testimony, and photographic evidence, all pointing to an encounter with technology that exceeds known human capabilities. Perhaps most disturbing was Peterson's revelation that Whitaker wasn't the only person to disappear under similar circumstances. Between 1980 and 2010, his department had documented 27 cases across remote wilderness areas worldwide with nearly identical signatures: sudden disappearances, anomalous metal fragments, electromagnetic disturbances, and in some cases, partial photographic evidence of unusual aerial phenomena. The implications were profound. Either multiple nations possessed technology far beyond publicly acknowledged capabilities, or something else, something non-human, was periodically removing people from remote locations, possibly for examination or study. This conclusion was supported by medical evidence that had been suppressed from the original investigation. The recovered metal fragments contained microscopic biological material that DNA testing confirmed belonged to James Whitaker. But the cellular structure had been altered in ways that defied explanation, showing evidence of exposure to unknown forms of radiation and examination at the molecular level. Further analysis conducted by Dr. Samantha Reynolds, a molecular biologist granted special clearance to examine the samples in 2011, revealed something even more unsettling. The cellular modifications found in Whitaker's tissue samples showed signs of deliberate manipulation rather than random damage. Precise alterations to mitochondrial structures that suggested an advanced understanding of human genetics beyond current scientific capabilities. These aren't random mutations or radiation effects, Dr. Reynolds noted in her classified report. These appear to be targeted modifications, almost as if someone or something was experimenting with human cellular function at a fundamental level. In 2013, this theory gained additional support when 3 other cases from Dr. Peterson's list of 27 similar disappearances were re-examined. In each instance, recovered biological material showed identical patterns of cellular modification. Most notably, a 1994 case involving a geological surveyor who disappeared in the Ural Mountains of Russia, and a 2001 case involving an Australian wildlife photographer who vanished in the outback. Both contained biological samples with the exact same mitochondrial alterations found in Whitaker's cells. The statistical probability of identical genetic modifications occurring randomly across 3 unrelated individuals was calculated by geneticists at Johns Hopkins University as effectively impossible without deliberate intervention. Even more compelling was the discovery that all 3 individuals had been in remote locations documenting unusual phenomena in the days before their disappearances. The Russian surveyor had noted magnetic anomalies in his field journal. The Australian photographer had captured unusual aerial lights on film the night before he vanished. Captain Robert Miller, a former naval intelligence officer assigned to the Pentagon's Special Access Programs, came forward in 2014 with additional information. According to Miller, the U.S. government had been aware of these patterns since at least the mid-1970s and had established a classified protocol known as Operation Woodland, specifically designed to monitor remote wilderness areas where similar incidents had occurred. These weren't random events, Miller testified before a closed Senate Intelligence Committee. Analysis showed statistical clustering around certain geographic features, predominantly remote areas with minimal population, but specific geological characteristics, particularly high concentrations of rare earth elements and natural electromagnetic anomalies. Miller revealed that Special Forces units had been covertly deployed to these locations following Whitaker's disappearance, equipped with advanced sensor technology designed to detect the specific energy signatures associated with the phenomena. On 3 separate occasions between 1990 and 2005, these units recorded brief encounters with objects matching the description captured in Whitaker's recovered photograph. The most significant of these encounters occurred in March 1994, when a special operations team documented an object approximately 80 feet in diameter, hovering silently over a remote valley in the Yukon Territory, less than 200 miles from where Whitaker had disappeared. The object reportedly emitted a blue-white beam, similar to the one captured in Whitaker's photograph, before accelerating vertically at a speed that rendered it invisible to the naked eye within seconds. Instrumental readings taken during this encounter showed energy signatures consistent with the radiation patterns found at Whitaker's disappearance site, and team members reported equipment failures identical to those experienced by the original search parties in 1987. In 2015, nearly 3 decades after his disappearance, the James Whitaker case was officially redesignated from missing unexplained to a new classification created specifically for cases involving potential non-human intelligence interaction. Sarah Whitaker, who had never remarried and had dedicated her life to uncovering the truth about her husband's disappearance, was finally granted access to the full, unredacted case file. "I always knew Jim didn't just vanish into the wilderness," Sarah told reporters. "He was taken. The question now is, by whom and why?" The evidence suggests James Whitaker had unintentionally documented something he wasn't meant to see, potentially an extraterrestrial craft engaged in operations in remote Alaskan wilderness. His knowledge of the terrain and methodical documentation had made him both a witness and, inadvertently, a threat to whatever intelligence was operating there. The glacial ice that preserved the evidence for 15 years had ironically been the key to unlocking the truth. Had climate change not accelerated glacial melt in the region, the metal fragments might have remained entombed for centuries. Instead, they provided the scientific community with some of the most compelling physical evidence ever documented of technology not originated on Earth. The Whitaker case has since become a cornerstone in serious scientific inquiry into unexplained aerial phenomena. In 2020, the Department of Defense established the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, dedicating significant resources to investigating similar cases with a new level of scientific rigor and transparency. For the Whitaker family, the truth has brought both closure and new questions. "Dad was always fascinated by the stars," Michael Whitaker, now in his 50s, reflected. "I think he'd find it tragically ironic that his disappearance has helped humanity acknowledge we may not be alone." The metal fragments recovered from the Alaskan ice remain under study at multiple research facilities, continuing to challenge our understanding of material science, propulsion technology, and ultimately, our place in the universe. What the public wasn't told, however, was that in 2018, researchers at the Los Alamos National Laboratory made an astonishing discovery while examining the metallic fragments under quantum tunneling microscopes. Embedded within the atomic structure of the metal were what appeared to be encoded patterns, sequences that defied random distribution and suggested deliberate information storage at the subatomic level. Dr. Marcus Reynolds, a quantum physicist who led the examination team, later revealed in a closed Senate Intelligence Committee hearing, "What we found wasn't just advanced metallurgy. It was a form of data storage beyond anything in our technological roadmap. These weren't just metal fragments, they were information carriers designed to survive extreme conditions indefinitely." Even more remarkable was that the patterns weren't static. They shifted in response to different electromagnetic frequencies, suggesting an interactive component. When exposed to specific radiation patterns, the fragments emitted measurable energy pulses in sequences that mathematicians determined had a non-random, potentially linguistic structure. This revelation led to the creation of Project Rosetta in late 2019, a classified multidisciplinary effort to decode what might be the first confirmed attempt at non-human communication. The project brought together linguists, cryptographers, physicists, and even SETI researchers under unprecedented security protocols. By 2021, preliminary findings suggested the patterns contained 3 distinct types of information: technical specifications possibly related to the craft's propulsion system, astronomical coordinates pointing to star systems over 40 light-years from Earth, and what appeared to be biological data potentially related to James Whittaker himself. The implications are staggering, noted Dr. Elaine Sanderson, a xenolinguist recruited for Project Rosetta. If these patterns are indeed a form of communication, they suggest the entities responsible wanted their technology to be discovered and wanted us to understand something about both them and Whittaker. This wasn't just a random encounter. It may have been a deliberate exchange. In a disturbing parallel development, similar metallic fragments with matching atomic structures were discovered at 3 other disappearance sites globally between 2016 and 2023, one in the Siberian taiga, another in the Australian outback, and a third in a remote region of the Andes. Each case involved a single individual vanishing under circumstances similar to Whittaker's, and in each instance, unusual metal fragments were recovered years later. Perhaps most significant was the discovery that all 4 individuals shared a rare genetic marker, a specific mitochondrial DNA sequence found in less than 0.01% of the global population. This revelation prompted a classified genetic screening program within certain government agencies to identify other individuals with the marker, ostensibly for protective monitoring. The Whittaker family was not informed of this genetic component until 2022, when Michael Whittaker's daughter, Emma, a graduate student in astrophysics, was approached by Department of Defense personnel after routine genetic testing revealed she carried the same marker. She was quietly offered a position within the classified research program, studying the fragments, the first time a family member of any disappearance victim had been granted such access. Emma Whittaker's work with the program led to another breakthrough. Using advanced quantum computing algorithms she developed, researchers were able to isolate what appeared to be temporal markers within the encoded information, suggesting the metal fragments weren't just recording past events but potentially contained predictive data about future encounters. "We believe these aren't isolated incidents," Emma stated in a protected deposition. "The evidence suggests a long-term monitoring program, possibly spanning centuries, with periodic interactions with specific human genetic lineages. My grandfather wasn't randomly selected. He was part of something much larger and more deliberate." In 2024, remote sensing technology detected an anomalous object approaching Earth's orbit with similar energy signatures to those recorded on the night of Whittaker's disappearance. The object maintained a stationary position over the Pacific Ocean for approximately 7 minutes before accelerating beyond tracking capabilities. During its brief appearance, it transmitted a focused energy beam toward a specific coordinate in the Alaskan wilderness, precisely where James Whittaker had disappeared 37 years earlier. A subsequent expedition to the location revealed a perfectly circular melted depression in the permafrost, within which researchers discovered fresh metallic fragments with the same composition as those recovered previously. These new fragments, however, contained even more complex encoded patterns, suggesting an evolution in the communication attempt. For the scientific community granted access to this information, the implications have been paradigm-shifting. "We're no longer asking if we're being visited," noted Dr. Reynolds in a classified briefing. "We're asking why these specific individuals were chosen, what information is being exchanged, and what it means for our understanding of consciousness, information theory, and our place in a potentially populated universe." The Whittaker case has thus evolved from an isolated disappearance to the centerpiece of what may be humanity's first comprehension of non-human intelligence, an intelligence that appears to have been selectively interacting with specific human genetic lines for purposes we are only beginning to understand. As Sarah Whittaker noted in her final interview before her passing in 2023, "Jim always believed we weren't alone. I never imagined his disappearance would be the key to proving he was right. I just wish he could know that his passion for the unknown ultimately opened the door to humanity's greatest discovery." The investigation continues. With the newest generation of Whittakers now at its center, Emma Whittaker's work has expanded beyond the original focus on her grandfather's disappearance to encompass the broader implications of these encounters. This isn't just about what happened to one man in the Alaskan wilderness, she observed in a recent academic paper carefully scrubbed of classified details. It's about recognizing that we may have been part of a cosmic dialogue for longer than we've realized. We just didn't know how to listen. Thank you for joining us for this extraordinary investigation. If you've made it this far, we appreciate you following this account of unexplained phenomena. What do you think about the Whitaker case? Do you believe there are more disappearances like this that remain unexplained? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated on our future investigations into the unknown.